What is going on, everybody? So today I saw a video from someone I know, Crim6, on complexity, and it was a sort of tutorial video, tip video for Call of Duty Ghost on how to corner properly. And he actually mentioned that there is a similarity between this sort of movement in Call of Duty and that in Counter-Strike. I have a background in competitive Counter-Strike. You know, I used to play loads of mixes back in the day. I've been playing since like 2004, whenever Half-Life 2 came out with Counter-Strike Source. And so it's a game that I know like a reasonable amount on. I'm not some pro level player, I never was, and I'm definitely not right now, but I would be selling myself short if I didn't say that I do know a reasonable amount about Counter-Strike. I'd also like to think that I know a reasonable amount about Call of Duty as well. Something that I've noticed recently is a lot of my friends who are in competitive Call of Duty are taking an interest in Counter-Strike. And since I know a bit about both of the titles, the idea kind of came to me today after watching Crim's video that I could make a sort of tutorial / tip series for people coming from Call of Duty into Counter-Strike. This is the first episode and we are going to be talking about recoil mechanics. Before I get into this video, let me quickly mention that if you like this video, you know, share it, leave a comment, that's going to help me a lot. I do genuinely think that this is a very relevant video for a lot of people I know personally who want to play Counter-Strike and are coming from Call of Duty and are trying to learn. And this whole series should help all of you guys out. So yeah, retweet it and all of that, it will help me out a lot. Now, if you've played Call of Duty, you will know that the recoil in the game is not too difficult to control. Some people would even argue in Call of Duty there isn't really any recoil. If you look on the screen right now, you can see me firing the Vector with the red dot. I'm going between standing, crouching, running, and jumping. And what's happening is that where I'm firing, where I'm pointing with my red dot, the bullets are going to be landing. And so that's regardless of movement, forward, sideways, up, whether I'm crouching, whatever. You are slightly more accurate when you're crouching and when you're lying down, but essentially there is very little difference between where you're pointing whilst you're firing and where the bullets actually land. Now in Counter-Strike, this is completely different. Every gun in Counter-Strike has a recoil pattern. And so what that means is that each gun is programmed to have a pattern with which the recoil of your gun will follow. You should be able to see this on the screen right now. As you can see, there is quite a bit of recoil. And as you can also see, there is a pattern to this recoil. And so what that means is that if you're coming from Call of Duty into Counter-Strike, you need to learn the recoil patterns of certain guns. This is something that a lot of Call of Duty players coming into Counter-Strike don't realise, or at least don't actually understand how important it is. In Call of Duty, you can just spray a gun and it's going to fire where you're looking. In Counter-Strike, you need to be able to fire and control the recoil so it goes where you want it to. I've attached some resources in the description box which show pictures of the recoil patterns that you need to follow to control the recoil of your gun. You can also see me on screen firing the AK and the M4 and controlling their recoil patterns to a certain extent. A side note which is quite obvious to Counter-Strike players but might not be so obvious to Call of Duty players is that spraying your gun like this is not the way you fire your gun all the time. This is something that you do in only particular situations. Let me point out though that there is no real hard and fast rule for this, but nonetheless some situations that you might find yourself doing this are short distances, medium distances, groups of people who are relatively close to you, and if you come around the corner and someone is very close to you. Again, something else that I definitely need to point out, which I forgot because again I'm so used to the way this game works, is that in Counter-Strike your movement heavily affects the way your gun fires and the recoil of your gun. These recoil patterns stay the same but will get offset and made worse if you are moving. If you stay still, you will have 100% accuracy within that recoil pattern. And so essentially in Counter-Strike, if you want to have an accurate shot and you want your bullets to go exactly where you're firing your gun, you need to be standing still. I'm planning on covering the different techniques to firing your gun in my next video, but for now I definitely needed to mention that. One other thing that I would like to note before I conclude this first video is that the AK on the terrorist side, its first shot has 100% accuracy if you are standing still to where you are pointing. This is a huge advantage to this assault rifle, and a lot of professionals in the Counter-Strike world love this gun because of that. So let me conclude this video and kind of give you a few thoughts to take away with you. In Call of Duty, different types of movement have relatively little effect on where your bullets go to where you're aiming. In Counter-Strike, the opposite is true. Your movement heavily affects your recoil, and you need to keep that in mind when you are firing. Following on from that, you need to be standing still if you want 100% accuracy for the recoil pattern. And then 4, you need to learn these recoil patterns if you want to fire a gun effectively in Counter-Strike. And finally, the caveat to this is that you do not always spray your gun and follow the whole recoil pattern. There are multiple ways to fire your gun, such as the single shot with the AK that I mentioned earlier, and I will be covering these in another video. That's about it for now. I hope that helped everybody out. Keep in mind that this is my first video for this series, so it could be a bit disjointed, and I'm sure that's going to improve over time. Thanks very much for watching, everybody, and I will catch you all next time. Peace!